very much. Thank you, Eduardo, and thank you, Jess, for having me on, and thank you, everyone, for showing up for today's conversation, and for those that will be watching this online as a recording, welcome too. So today we're going to have a very interactive session. As Eduardo already established, we're going to have Q&A at the end, but we kindly request that you go into this, use this QR code, scan it, or you can also use the link that Jess will be posting on the chat, joinushere.co, so you can answer some of these questions. And the first poll question that we're going to be answering today is, how familiar are you with the principles of...
Sorry to jump in. I think we have to check if they have login into the...
Oh, okay. Yes. Let's make sure that we have, but there are some people that already log in. So you can still scan the same QR code that you see on the lower left and join us. But the first question is, how familiar are you with the principles of process improvement, aka operational excellence, Lean, Six Sigma, TQM? There are many names, brand names out there, but please let us know, how familiar are you with these principles? We have some of, they're very familiar, someone are somewhat familiar, unfamiliar. So we have kind of a half and half audience here, kind of 50%, around 50% is on the familiar, very familiar side, and others are unfamiliar. Let's move on to the next question then. Hopefully everyone is online now. The second question is, how familiar are you with the fourth industrial revolution, or Industry 4.0, and the technologies related to it? And some of you may say, yeah, I know what AI is. Well, it's more than just AI.
It's just the tip of the iceberg.
So we have a change now. We have a lot of unfamiliar people and someone that are somewhat familiar, and just one that is very, very familiar. Very good. Well, that will help me to kind of gauge the conversation, make sure that I don't sound repetitive if you already know something. Let's go to the third one, which is, which group do you feel describe you're better? You know, which group do you align yourself? Are you a founder or a senior leader? Are you an employee of an organization? Are you a solopreneur? Are you retired or not currently employed? Excellent. I'm very grateful for your participation. Thank you very much. So with that, go ahead, Eduardo, with the first question that you have for us.
Sure. Thank you, Juan. Let me start with a foundational question that I believe is important. Can you explain to us what process improvement is, and why process improvement is crucial for organization of all sizes?
Excellent question, Eduardo. The first concept that I would like to explain, I would like to kind of break down the answer of this question in several layers. The first layer is, I want to be able to explain several concepts that are foundational for understanding the answer of the question. First is the first concept I want to address is, what is an organization? Okay, so if we click here, we're going to see that an organization is a structured group of people with a common purpose. And that could be conducting business, providing services, pursuing a common interest, engaging in nonprofit activities, all to serve the needs of its customers. There are no organizations that exist for themselves. They all have customers to serve. The second concept I would like to explain is that any organization can be identified, can be studied with three distinctive components. The people component, both the internal people that are part of the organization, the processes the organization uses to create and deliver the value they offer to their customers, and the technology the organization is using to enable its people to deliver that value. Okay, so having that in mind, this is a triad that requires all those three elements. Any organization that do not pay attention to any of these elements will not be successful. And the third concept I would like to explain is what is a process. And Eduardo alluded to it a little bit in the introduction. I would say that a process is a series of actions or steps performed systematically to produce a desired outcome or result. A process transforms the inputs that you have into outputs, okay? And I would say that the fourth concept is what is technology, because we all have different ways of looking at technology. We might think technology is only software related or internet related. Not really. Technology could be said that is the application of scientific knowledge for practical purposes involving machines, tools, techniques, and systems to solve problems and enable the creation of value. Okay, so that is technology. It's a wider range of things that encompass what technology is. So with that in mind, we can say that now we can go and explain what process improvement is. So process improvement could be said that is the systematic evaluation and enhancement of existing process capabilities, as well as creating new process capabilities. And what is the result of process improvement? Well, you can produce with higher efficiency and productivity, you can reduce cost, you can improve your quality, on-time delivery, and safety, and that will in turn delight your customers. You can increase employee satisfaction and pride of working in that organization. You can also foster a culture of adaptability and innovation. You can improve your organization overall reputation, not only the bottom line, and you can also become a market leader. That is pretty powerful. Do you think, Eduardo?
Definitely. Whenever I work with corporations, one of the ways they are able to reduce costs is by actually improving the processes, whether they are manual or computerized processes.
Yes, it is powerful. So that leads us to the next question, I think.
Yeah. How all of these apply in a small business environment? Or how can we start or apply this concept in a small organization?
And that's a very tricky question, because if you are a solopreneur, and I believe we have some in the audience, you may not be ready for this, okay? So I would say that as this Chinese aphorism says, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with single step, Lao Tse. Certainly, any organization, big or small, can begin their journey with the following few steps. And I would like to kind of talk about those following first steps into a journey of continuous improvement, process improvement, transformation. And let's say the first step will be to define the vision, the mission, and the values of the organization. And that could be done even by a solopreneur. If you're starting up your business, you really need to sit down with yourself or any partner and define what is your role. What is the role of your organization? What is it? What is the market that you are going to serve? What is your vision of the future? And let me explain what that means, because sometimes people get confused with mission and vision. They don't know what's the difference between them. So defining the vision of it, let's say it is like, what do you want to see at the top of the mountain of success? Basically, what is the view of your organization? If you can fast forward time in the future, what would you like to see? That's what the vision is. Then the mission is the purpose of the organization, is the reason for the organization to exist. It describes the path you're going to select to get to the top of that mountain. And there are many ways of getting to the top of the mountain. And by doing what, you will arrive there. That's basically what the mission stands for. And finally, the values. And the values are one of the most important because it requires a definition of the moral compass. By behaving how are we going to get to the top of the mountain? And I'm amazed how many organizations, Eduardo and Jess, that I have met personally, that I work for myself, that they stumble with these 3 foundational steps because they struggle to create a very cohesive strategic plan to operate with excellence, just because there is confusion about what those 3 elements are. What are your thoughts?
I think this is a good reflection of what's going on. And another situation that I find very often is that process improvement is done in silos. Sales doing what they think is better, finance also doing their own thing, but there is no corporate initiative to see process improvement as initiative for the whole corporation. That's what I would add to this.
If I can interrupt too,
Yes.
I spent about 45 years in the industry, and I reached a point where I'd rather cut my throat than have to sit through a missions, visions, and values session. I understand that in principle they're fantastic, but most of them are just pro forma, and senior management thinks they have to go through it. Therefore, they go through it. They spend a week or so generating it, and a week later, no one remembers what it was, and management is doing what it wants to do to begin with. So, whenever I hear mission, vision, and value, I want to run in the opposite direction.
Hey, Joel, you have a great point. It's not, the problem is not that it's not useful. The problem is what we do with it. And that's easy the application of it. And we're going to talk about that because that's one is, I'm going to present to you data supporting. The problem is not having it. The problem is not having a strategic plan. The problem is what we do with it. And that is in the execution side of things. So thank you for your input. So I believe this leads us to the 3rd question, correct?
Yes, I believe so. What are the type of common challenges companies face in process to implement process improvement, and how they tackle them?
Well, definitely the first one, and relating to what the audience was saying right now, I think was Joel. The data tells us, and based on a recent survey by Gartner of corporate strategies, the people that are paid to create the strategy for big organizations, the top 3 reasons of poor execution of the strategy are ambiguous responsibilities, inability to cascade objectives to teams and individuals, and the lack of clear priorities. Those 3. And so when responsibilities to execute the strategies is ambiguous, and when objectives are not successfully cascaded down to teams and individuals, and when executing the strategy is not at the top of everyone's priority list, failure to achieve the results of the strategy is certain. The second common challenge, though, I would say, is decide in which path to follow. This is a journey. I define it as a journey, but there are many paths to get to the top of that mountain. Many. In the world of process improvement, I could quote you dozens of methodologies that we can use to improve any organization. And 2 of the most prominent, not necessarily the only ones, are Six Sigma and Lean methodologies. Which path is best for your organization? You might ask. Well, it depends on a lot of factors, and full of the understanding of what are the organization's challenges and also the state of maturity of the organization. If it is a very young organization, very entrepreneurial, or if it is a older, established organization. What is the culture of the organization? What is the maturity of the processes that they have? What is the maturity of the technology that runs that operation? All of that is important. So there's no one size fit all. Some people will say, well, go with Six Sigma. Well, it depends. Some others will say, go with Lean. Well, it depends. Now, if you are in doubt, consult
Hybrid.
one of the people that knows about this and have experience in the subject. Some of people will say, well, I'll go with Lean. I favor Lean in many ways, in many cases, but sometimes Six Sigma is the only way. So there's no one single answer to this question. What you were saying, Eduardo?
There in some cases, we can go with a hybrid approach. Develop a methodology that fits the requirements of the company that we are looking at.
That is correct. That is correct. That leads us to the next question, I believe.
That is correct. What process improvement technique, simple yet effective, can be applied immediately?
Well, I think that we already mentioned having clarity on the reason for being of the organization. And so that's basically the foundation of the strategy. If you don't know where you're going, you don't know if you're winning the game, basically. If you don't know what the destination is, any road you take is good. Therefore, you really need to know where you're going. And there are many, as I think the audience already referred to, some people just do it to check that box. Oh, yes, we did a strategic plan session, fine, but it lacks substance in terms of the execution. So once you define the strategy, once you know where are you going, where are you heading as an organization, the next step is to align the organization's priorities to support this strategy. As I said before, you need to put objectives, you need to put measurable progress towards the plan. You have to measure the progress. You have to execute the plan. You have to also document key processes. And how many organizations don't have any documentation whatsoever? If we have a key employee leave tomorrow, all that knowledge went out of the window. We have to identify all the steps in those processes that do not add value to the customer. Many of those processes that we engage in, or many of the steps in processes that we engage in, don't add any value. And what we mean about value is that if you tell your customer that you are billing them for that activity, they would probably say, I'm not interested in paying for that. So therefore, that is a key way to define what actual value added is. And finally, to eliminate those value added steps. That would be my recipes for success, because it sounds very simple, but organizations will spend years in the last three alone. Do you think, Eduardo, have you seen that before?
Say that again, please.
That I said that organizations, this may sound simple, but many organizations will spend years in the last 3 points of documenting key processes, identifying all the steps that don't add value, and eliminating those non-value added steps.
Yes, that is true. But thankfully, now that there are new technologies like process mining, that allows some corporations to go directly into their systems, and process mining enables them to document how their processes operate, which make things more efficient for companies that are able to get access to that technology.
Definitely. And for those that are not very much related to what process mining stands for, it is one of the many newer technologies that we have in this new industrial revolution. And we're going to talk about what those technologies are. Process mining is listed in one of the top 25 technologies, but that is true. It is possible now to do the work of a year in a few months to identify those opportunities. And the next question then, I believe.
How do you measure all of this, Juan?
Well,
I think what are your insights about this? How metrics can be used to measure improvement?
that's a great question, Eduardo, because I'm a firm believer that if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. And many organizations define metrics around the impact of process improvement. And I am all about it. I'm up for that. But you have to be careful, because sometimes when you measure the wrong things, may induce the wrong behaviors. You don't want to do that. Okay, so you really need to ensure that you don't measure the wrong things, and then the wrong behaviors, the wrong values are going to arise. So some organizations define value creation directly related to the improvements. And I would say things such as cost avoidance, cost savings. Those are financially hard values that anyone can identify in a P&L as a reduction. Another metric I've seen also is hours of process efficiencies created. Let me explain. And so imagine that we have this process. This process often takes 10 hours to execute, a day and a few hours of the next day. And after you complete a project, that new process now has, we reduce it to 5 hours of execution. We took basically 5 hours of waste or unnecessary steps out of the process. So that means that you have a 5-hour gain in productivity improvement for every time that you execute that process. So if you, let's say in general, in average, you execute that process 100 times a year, that means that you have 5 hours time, 100 times per year, you have 500 hours of productivity improvement gain from that project alone. So that is one way of measuring the value that in the impact that you created. And that additional capacity, Eduardo, you can use it to help the business to expand their offerings into other areas that previously you couldn't because you didn't have the manpower. And now you can do it because you probably don't need to hire more people to do it. So that is very powerful. There is another way of measuring the process improvement. It is using metrics that look at the progress of the organization. Let's say you have some key metrics, and many organizations do have these metrics like safety compliance, quality compliance, delivery on time delivery. Are we delivering on time? Cost reduction or cost, product cost, inventory productivity, etc. I am a proponent of taking or tracking these metrics, whatever they are, whatever those are the important metrics, depending on your strategy. Of course, some of these metrics may not make sense for your organization, but the ones that do, track them daily. If you meet the criteria, that day is color green. If you don't meet the criteria, that day is color red. Very simple, very easy to track. No need to complicate it with technology and digital dashboards. Start simple, and that is the first step into the right direction.
Next question. Can you share with us some examples of process improvement has had a positive impact?
Well, yes, and these are examples fresh from the oven out of different organizations that I work for. Kimberly-Clark, $6.3 million of value creation, cost saving and cost avoidance, 130,000 hours of productivity improvement. Sikorsky in Coatesville, Pennsylvania, I lived there for 3.5 years, 12% reduction in the time it takes to deliver a product or lead time, 33% increase of inventory turns, and 12% reduction of labor hours per product. Pratt & Whitney, also in the aerospace business, double revenues in 3 years. Customer validated productivity improvements totaling $4.4 million, meaning this organization to their customers, they found cost savings on behalf of the customer. Okay, and because of that, they were recognized twice by their customers as a best-in-class supplier. You can become best-in-class yourself and differentiate yourself from the competition by adopting a culture of process improvement.
So again, I have another question.
Yes, of course.
Yes, typically when improvements are put in, and typically when people are forced out of their way of doing things, there is usually resistance from certain quarters in a given company. They either don't see the need or have a vested interest in doing things the way they are. So how do you overcome that?
That's an excellent question, Joe. And that is part of the journey. When you are designing the journey for the organization, you have to have, as part of the implementation, a change management strategy, because you will have resistance to change. That's human nature. We don't like change. We can say all over that we love surprises. We hate surprises, even the good ones. We hate surprises. So therefore, yes, it is in human nature to resist the change, but you have to, as part of the implementation, and that's what sometimes it's missing. You have to have a change management strategy and a plan, and you execute that change management strategy and plan to start shifting the perception of the people that are part of that organization, so they can understand the why behind that change, and they can be on board. They can be a part of the journey instead of resisting the journey. So the change, it's happening, whether they want it or not, and they need to understand. You need to do a great job at teaching them why it is important for them and how they can have a say in the process. So yes, it's going to happen. You need to manage it. Thank you for the question.
In the interest of time, if you can give us a quick summary as to how technology enhance process improvement, and also if we can combine also with your question about the Industrial Revolution 4.0, how applies that to us?
Yes, of course. And technology plays a role, a key role, because remember that we said that, you know, any organization have three main components: people, the process, and technology. And the technology aspects of a process improvement journey is key to ensure that we arrive at the next level of execution performance. And right now we are experiencing a revolution in the evolution of technology, in which many experts call the fourth industrial revolution, or the Industry 4.0. And only organizations that can leverage this technology revolution will become market leaders. And for that, let me talk a little bit about the Industrial Revolution 4.0, what it means. So giving you an overview of what this means, and let me show the graphic here. The first industrial revolution, to give you a little bit of context, happened within the 1700s, and was the steam machine revolution. The second was in the 1800s with the electricity, the mass production factories. The third, we could say, it was the last century in the 1900s, with the computers, the advent of automation, the advent of robotics, and also the advent of the internet. And right now, in the 21st century, we are experiencing the fourth. And this is with the cyber physical artificial intelligence, with many revolutionary technology applications. And I have a slide here that it's an eye chart, but my apologies for that, but there are many. These are some of the top 25 future shaping Industry 4.0 technologies that I'm aware of. And there are many more coming into the pipeline as we speak. So what we know about history is that companies that resisted the change became obsolete. Early adopters made massive fortunes, and seismic knowledge gap also was created in the workforce, meaning that the horse and carriage drivers were substituted by train conductors, managed by steam. Then to taxi drivers with the automobile, and then to Uber drivers, and then now we are in the self-driven cars, which is the next shift. So entire professions were replaced, and only those that adopted these new technologies remain relevant.
Again, but another comment is that all these changes were incredibly disruptive. I mean, over the years, we've kind of lost sight of that because it looks like a very smooth transition. But hand weavers rioted against looms. And people who loved horses, imposed like 5-mile-an-hour speed limits on automobiles, and they wanted a guy with a red flag walking in front of the automobile to wave people. So the more disruptive the technology, the more people feel threatened.
Yes.
I think that has to be recognized.
Yes, actually, not only, historically, we can see even the ATM machine. I barely go to the physical bank anymore, except for to the ATM machine. ATM machines were an ugly thing back in the 70s when they were introduced, because people look at them as very impersonal. They like their relationship they had with a bank teller person because they knew them by name and they knew themselves. So that's just an example, pretty recent example of how difficult it might be to introduce this technology. But if history serves us well, all those technologies actually replace complete and entire industries, and people needed to reskill themselves to be able to survive.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I would say my kids don't even know what an ATM machine is because they don't need it. I mean, I carry like about I carry $20 in cash in my wallet just in case. But I haven't paid cash for anything in years. It's all debit cards and wire transfers. So again, we're reaching a point where physical cash is going to become obsolete at some point.
That is true. That is true, Joel. And you just described another step forward of technology from the ATM to the virtual bank, which you carry on your own pocket. Okay, Eduardo, I believe that we're ready for Q&A.
Yeah, I think we had already started the Q&A. I don't know if there are more questions or anything that you would like us to expand about process improvement.
Well, I'm kind of reminded of this old joke. And there's a farmer and he's doing his old primitive stuff and he's growing his grain and feeding himself. And a guy from the Department of Agriculture comes by and tells him all these wonderful, wonderful things that he could do to improve his yield. And he said, yeah, I can do a much better job than I'm doing right now. But frankly, I'm pretty happy with what I'm doing. Thank you very much.
And Joel, what is the punchline?
Well, that is the punchline. Punchline is he could be much better. He doesn't care to.
And that is true. And I would say that is true in many organizations today. They feel they are safe. They feel that they don't have to change. They feel that they're doing good money. Why should they do anything different? The problem with that mindset is that was exactly the same mindset that many big corporations in the past had, like Blockbuster. They didn't see the internet as being the next vehicle for their movie streaming technology. Wasn't there yet. It was invented, but not there yet, and not at the point in which it is today. And they failed to recognize that acquiring Netflix was the best next thing they could do. And now, where do you see? Netflix is the top in the marketplace, and Blockbuster is no longer. So that is true. People will resist change, especially if they feel that they are in a comfort zone. They're cranking good money out of the businesses. Well, that is a myopic way of behaving these days, because you might be confronted with a crude reality that someone else will take your customers away.
Another good example is Kodak. They were a market leader, and then they disappeared. All right.
So if history teaches well, we better not do that. And those that resist change, okay, they will be taken care of by destiny.
Beacon is the premier executive networking organization serving the Mid-Atlantic region. To learn more, go to beaconforlife.org.